3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Antimatters. Hello everyone and welcome to part 3 of the Ant Cave tour. This episode, it's all about Polyrachis species, my favourite. First up, we've got the Polyrachis moester. I've actually got 2 colonies of these now, because I decided to split my 2 queen colony with 2 workers into 2 1 queen and 1 worker colonies. The one in the background you can see at the minute, they're doing rubbish. No, I shouldn't be too harsh to them because they've probably had quite a hard life and they've come from halfway around the world. But this queen and this worker, they're actually being really lazy. They haven't laid any eggs or larvae yet. Well, not since I separated them. Fingers crossed soon, maybe they decide that, well, they will lay some brood because, well, it's been quite a while now. They've been separated for a few weeks, but nothing's happening, and I've given them loads of food. From cockroaches to morio worms, and also crickets. They seem to have accepted some of it, but it hasn't seemed to turn into brood just yet. I'm hoping that maybe they just get the feeling that it's the wrong season to lay any eggs, and yeah, in time they'll warm to the idea. The other colony, though, they definitely aren't having that problem at the minute. As you can see, this little worker here is running around with something in her mouth, which just happens to be 1 piece of brood. Normally, I'd be a little bit worried that the queen's only laid 1 egg, but I'm over the moon. It means that hopefully this queen is 100% fertile. I can't lie, as the weeks have been dragging on, I was starting to get worried that maybe both queens were a dud, but this queen has kind of given me a little bit of hope. I'd really love to have a big colony of these because I don't think I've ever seen one. They're quite beautiful little ants though, when you have an up close look. Their gaster has a lovely red tinge, well this worker does anyway. If you skip back to the other worker, it doesn't have a red tinge at all. I'm not fully convinced that they're the same species. Both workers are over 2 or 3 months old now as well, so they've had plenty of time to dry off. I'm not really sure what's going on. Look at their beautiful spikes though on her back. The queen has also got a nice set. They're a little bit less kind of protruding than the workers though, the queens. As with a lot of Polyrachis, she has those lovely beady eyes. I also get a feeling that her antennas, they make a really good M, and that's maybe why they're called moester. I haven't looked up what moester means in Latin though, and it could mean something completely different, but not many ants make such a good M with their antenna. It's probably just me though. Next up, the Polyrachis Proxima. These are definitely one of my favourite species on the planet. Out of all the Polyrachis, I can only think of 1 species that I would choose over these, and that's the Upsilon, I think they're called. They're basically Polyrachis Proxima in kind of the colour department, with also the really big kind of fish hook spikes where they proper come out the back. They're an absolutely stunning ant. I'd highly recommend looking them up. Like Upsilon, I think it is. It's probably said that wrong. As normal though, the Polyrachis Proxima is shining like a little golden nugget. From different angles, she looks completely different as well. They did have a Venus Mini as well, but I decided to change that for a tube pod. Mostly because I only put them in the Venus so I could take out their old dry tube, because basically they weren't moving out of it any other way. So I just had to put it in a Venus with a nice new tube. Eventually they figured out what was going on and decided to move. So far, they've been doing absolutely fantastic though. At the moment, there is at least 2 larvae, although it may be 1 larvae now and 1 cocoon because it's been a couple days since I filmed this, and the bigger larvae looks ready to grow. There's also a few eggs, which are stuck onto the larvae in the queen's mouth. I'm really happy that this colony hasn't stalled though. A lot of the time with Polyrachis colonies, if you mess them up or stress them out when they're in the founding stage, they can completely stall, and for years even, you'll be there waiting for new workers which will never come. Luckily, this queen, after being expertly looked after by Sam at Antantics, has had the best start in life possible, I think. She is absolutely a beauty in my opinion though. I don't think I'll ever get over the gold tinge on her. Every time I look in, it's just mesmerising to be honest. You can't stop staring at it. The little workers are also starting to get a really good gold sheen as well. Normally you can't see it, but when they're lit up really well, you can see them glistening. Every time I see it as well, I think, if I can ever get them to over 100 workers, my god, I think I'd have to quit my job and just stare at them all day. They're just so beautiful. And I'm really, really happy to have this colony. Out of all of them, they're definitely my favourites. In the beard department as well, they do really well. Out of 10, I'd rate their beards an 8. I'd rate their spikes at about a 7 as well. If you compare that to these girls here, the Polyrachis armata, I rate their spikes at 9 I think. They got amazing spikes, however their beard, it's only a 4. Let's have a good look at these though. Since I've got them, the brood has been doing absolutely brilliant. You can see here there's a really well developed cocoon as well. You can see the small worker inside's eyes. It may be possible as well that in this video that the queen is also working out how to try to cut the worker open. It's really nearly ready to go. The Polyrachis armata though have their wonderful spikes. I think they may be the longest out of all the spikes of any of my Polyrachis species. Super pretty little, well they're not little workers, super pretty big workers, and a super pretty giant queen. If you look at the video here as well, you might notice there seems to be some fibres. That is basically a woven nest by the armata themselves. What they'll do is they use the larvae to make their silk, and they'll line the test tube. Eventually, there's a good chance I won't be able to see in this test tube because the fibres, they just build them up and up and up until you can barely see in. It's already becoming quite hard to actually film them because it's getting quite thick, and as it dries out, it gets really cloudy. From what I can see though, at the moment, there is 2 cocoons, countless larvae, and I think there's about 10 eggs scattered around in there, so the queen has been really busy. The workers as well are always ready to protect Her Majesty. But just check them out, they're beautiful little ants. I'd highly recommend getting a colony of armata if you're just starting getting Polyrachis because they seem very bomb-proof and very resilient. Time for the next species though. Up now we have the Rastellata. I think that's their name. I just call them the Rastas. These girls have an unbelievable shine, which kind of drew me in when I first saw them. Their spikes are a little bit little, but if you can see here, there they are. Some tiny little spikes. Thank you for the action replay. It's still really hard to film them, to be honest, to try and see the contours of their body and all the textures because they are just so shiny. They're also so black that, yeah, you just can't see any of the curves. You can just make out their beady eyes sometimes. They're a lovely active ant though, and I always see them running around in the outworld. As you can imagine, these girls don't rate very highly on the spike rating. Probably a 1 out of 10 because they barely even have spikes. On the beard rating though, I'd put them at about 7. They've got an alright little beard, especially for their size. Like the Armata as well, they're also weavers, so they've begun weaving up their test tube. There's so much brood inside their test tube now though. I can't even begin to count the amount of larvae they have stuck on the walls. It must be at least 30 to 40. Then they got countless cocoons and countless big larvae as well. I'm really hoping that if I continue shoveling in the food, the whole brood cycle will just go into turbo. They seem to develop really fast, and as you can see in the centre here, there's a tiny little worker that's freshly enclosed. Its legs are still really pale, and it hasn't learned how to walk yet, but give it a bit of time and it will slowly figure out how its body works. I think at this stage, this must be happening about every 1 or 2 days, and their numbers are flying up. When I first got them, there was 20, but now, last count, there was 25. So I'm really happy with the direction they're heading. It also seems that they are really fast at developing too, so I reckon they could be at 50 within 2 months. So by AntCon, I'd expect them to have 50 workers. Time for the final colony of the tour. These are the most developed of all the Polyrachis I have, and they are the Polyrachis dives. I believe there's 2 queens inside. However, I have found what I believe to be a queen's body once, so they may only have 1 remaining. I'm not too bothered though, because they seem to be growing nicely. This colony is about 9 months old, and I've been feeding them quite well. I could have fed them a lot more, to be honest, and they may be a lot bigger now, but they've only got 1 little weaver outworld, and they seem happy with the amount I'm giving them. As you can see, here is one of the test tubes when it gets fully woven up, and it just looks brown. You can't see anything. It might as well have a layer of paper inside of it. The ants though have been really busy inside of their, it's not miscanthus I don't think, but inside of their ball. It's fully woven up now, and little entrances are spotted all around it. You can see one at the bottom now. Every so often you'll see antennas pop out, and if you look inside of the hole, a lot of the time there'll be a little guard peeking out the hole. I'd guess this colony is at about 200 workers now, at least, and they seem very ferocious. If you annoy them, basically they'll get ready to shoot you with acid in a second. Here's another one of those little holes. As you can see, there's a little head inside. After keeping them for quite a while, one thing I've definitely noticed about the Polyrachis dives is they have quite a high turnover rate, and there always seems to be quite a lot of dead bodies in the outworld. I believe this is because they're quite bullyish. The worker ants will basically gang up on poor little workers that they don't think are strong enough and kill them. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I guess they do what they do. They're beautiful little ants though. Maybe rating a 6 on the spike scale. On the beard scale though, about a 4. So far though, I've found them to be wonderfully active. I got the colony with about 25 workers in the beginning, and there's always been at least 1 or 2 workers out and about doing stuff. I would highly recommend Polyrachis dives as a first colony if you're thinking about keeping Polyrachis as well, just because a lot of people have them, so it's not too hard to find guides and a lot of information on their care, which does really help increase their survival chances. Fingers crossed as the year goes by though, they continue to boom. Hopefully they'll maybe even start inbreeding. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this ant tour. Thank you for watching, and next episode, basically this should be the Tetramorium bicarinatum. I'm really excited for that episode, and it will be shared with the Carabera diversa as well. Then after that, I was originally going to have 4 parts, but it's going to have to be 5 parts now. Because, yeah, the Tetramorium and the Kerberos, they're going to need a lot of time. So until next time, thank you for watching, and bye!